We notice this in car accidents. Obviously, motorcycle accidents, especially if they're not wearing their helmet, or even if they are.
Both.
Both.
Yeah. And so we'll preserve, when we have a motorcycle intake, we'll preserve that helmet, right? I want to see the helmet that was involved when you had in a wreck, and we'll box it up and we make sure there's a chain of custody, because we may need to use that helmet to prove the TBI, especially if they don't have the symptoms early on. But I've got a helmet that's damaged, right? And then 6 months later, we're having to treat them at a neurologist, or having to go some kind of therapy, or something. They're having vision problems, or short-term memory, long-term memory, something that's popping up. Well, I've got that helmet to at least refer back to and say, look, we might have to get an expert involved. Here's the kind of here's where the point of impact was in this motorcycle wreck. Can you relate this back to as a improved causation? And that's kind of how we'll work those. But yeah, definitely keep your helmet on, but it can happen if you don't have it on, or you are wearing it.
Yeah. And it can happen. I think a common misconception is, and what we really took away from in San Diego, especially the first time I went, is you don't have to hit your head to have a brain injury, especially in a car accident. Just, and I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor, but the way your brain is in your head, just the moving of your head can cause your brain to sort of bounce off your skull and cause damage. And so, especially when you hit your head in a motorcycle accident, or when you're actually hitting your head on the windshield, that's like a major red flag for this person is probably has a concussion or a brain injury.
Right.
So even like whiplash.
Right.
Absolutely,
even whiplash can cause a brain injury or a concussion. So always be aware.
Yeah.
It's more of watching the symptoms, I think, than evaluating the incident, because after you undergo that kind of force, it's just a matter of if you do, if you develop those symptoms.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't have thought like a concussion would be like a traumatic brain injury. And I think that's just because growing up, you hear the word concussion all the time. You're like, you're fine. You just got a little concussion, So it's interesting to hear, know that it can be serious. That can be a lifetime thing, or whatever, that's still kind of classified as a brain injury.
Absolutely.
One of the things I took away from when we were just at the TBI conference in San Diego is they were saying how even when you're in an accident and you actually have a concussion, how many doctors at an ER miss that. And so there's such a large percentage of individuals who actually go in, have concussions, and they're misdiagnosed. And so you don't know. I mean, it's just like when you have a concussion, they're like, oh, go monitor your symptoms, have somebody look after you for a few hours. But just think about all of the people where it's misdiagnosed. So I think it's really important. We need to increase the awareness that it can happen. It can happen with something as simple as whiplash, because you are bouncing forward and back, and your brain is doing the same thing in your head, hitting the front, hitting the back. And so you can get these injuries. And so I think it's important to look at the symptoms, go and seek treatment, and for the people around you to notice as well.
Yeah. Because it really is about awareness and sort of self-monitoring. I think that's the hardest part about it, because you're not going back to your doctor. You're not scheduled to go follow up unless it's something really serious, right? Yeah. It's just more of go home, have somebody watch you, don't fall asleep, for more than 2 hours. And if it's not getting better, come back.
Yeah.
99% of people don't come back. And then we'll send this questionnaire out and we'll find, they're like, oh man, I really do need to see somebody. Like, I didn't even realize that I wasn't well.
So a main part of it is, people get headaches all the time, but if you're getting these reoccurring headaches, you need to get in. It's not just a normal headache.
And they need to be patient with their legal team, because they might want to settle their case fast, but we're not going to do that. You only have one chance at this. If we settle the case and you have a TBI a year later, you're done. There's no more money. Nothing else to get from the insurance company. So we'll let things mature, let it sit for a while, make sure you do not have symptoms on our TBI checklist, and then we'll be able to revisit the settlement.
And that means money for you, money to help you, because you don't know how severe your symptoms are and what you might need in the future. So, it's really to help you out with.
And just to give an example, if let's say it's a soft tissue whiplash case that Shardae's talking about, okay, well, what are you looking for out there? Maybe a few $1,000s? Okay. Well, if it turns into a traumatic brain injury case, you're looking at a life care plan that's going to run into 6-7 figures, easy. So assuming there's insurance there, it's worth it to wait, not only for your health, but for your financial well-being.
Yeah. Well, if you've been following our social media channels, we've been actually posting a lot of different statistics on brain injury numbers and awareness for that. And I kind of want to read a couple of these, because as they pop up, I've been surprised by a lot of them. So 70% of all sports and recreation related brain injuries reported in people ages 29 and younger. So 29 and younger, 70% of the sports injuries have been brain injuries, which is crazy.
Well, they're hitting their head. There's no athletic trainers there. It's all recreational games put together by like county, city leagues. I had a problem with this. I'm coaching a new league this year, a new flag football league.
Close to home.
Yeah. Well, no, but there's nobody out there. And I'm looking at all these kids. I'm thinking there's 120 kids running. There's 3 coaches coaching them. That's why I was like, I got to step up and help coach this league. So at least the ones that I'm coaching, I can identify stuff like that. Yeah. Because a concussion can happen simply. You don't have to be tackle football. Yeah. You can just pick somebody with a ball and that things can go bad very quickly, depending on how it hits you in the head. Yeah. So that's definitely a reason for that. Yeah. And it's just lack of education, lack of training.
Well, and I think a lot of times it's kind of like, a lot of those, there's like these tough sports where it's contact sports where it's kind of like, you're fine, rub some dirt in it kind of thing. And that's not the case. These kids could really have lasting effects from these things. In fact, the next statistic is 5.5% of high school athletes have had more than one concussion. So, I mean, we just need to be careful. Parents, really, you need to make sure that your kids are being taken to the doctor if they have been hit in the head or something like that.
And the treatment for a concussion is literally sit in a dark room, turn all the lights off, don't even think, and stay away from everybody. That's the best treatment. That's if you identify it from day one early. And so if you don't identify it, a week, 6 months down the road, I mean, a lot of those effects have already set in. And then with these kids, they're playing sports over and over, more seasons, different sports. They get hit in the head again. It's a cumulative effect. And then by the time they become adults, I mean, you can have these long-term issues set in.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I'm not a parent, but you see everybody out there. It's a concussion. Oh, you'll wait, but you'll be ready to go by next week. Yeah, it's like you have to treat a head injury, kids, clients, everybody, the same as you would any physical injury. We had a case once where, I won't tell the whole story, but it got to mediation and it was about money. Would you rather have, parts of your intestines missing or a traumatic brain injury for the rest of your life? And I asked my doctor friends, because I'm like, I'm going to have to sell this. And all of my doctor friends said, not the brain injury. Yeah. Because it's so unpredictable. You're going to have to get older. Your brain is so sensitive and all these reasons why that could be the worst thing to ever happen to you. And so keeping that in mind when you're playing these sports or when you're in these injuries, like you have to treat your concussion and your brain injury just like you would if you broke your ankle. Right. Watch the symptoms and baby it and make sure that you're doing everything you can to make it better before you just jump back in. Yeah. When life gets ugly, justice is